We cannot create space for inclusivity in the future without creating space for inclusivity in the past. Hello and welcome. My name is Jordana Gessler, and I'm the Vice President of Education and Exhibits at Holocaust Museum LA. Thank you for joining today's immensely important and meaningful program. We're honored to be towards the end of what has been an incredible day of learning, commemoration, and gathering. Our commemoration ceremony focuses on the Sephardic and Mizrahi victims of the Shoah, reminding us not only of the destruction of the vast Jewish community throughout Europe and North Africa, but of the beautiful tapestry of diversity that continues to thrive in spite of it. We also want to highlight the power of stories, sharing, and intergenerational cross-cultural dialogue. We will be joined live by survivor David Lenga and a teen from our community who found bonds and hope despite challenging circumstances. They will be introduced later on. We will shortly listen to a song in Ladino, a language used by Sephardic Jews who settled throughout the Mediterranean after the Spanish Inquisition. Like Yiddish, Ladino is mostly lost due to the Holocaust, leaving a gaping hole in our Jewish history and culture. The Holocaust devastated and virtually destroyed century-old Ashkenazi and Sephardic cultures, leading to an almost complete demise of unique languages and traditions. The song that is hauntingly beautiful will be followed by brief remarks and words from a Sephardic survivor in our community, Albert Rosa. Albert was born in Salonika, Greece in January of 1925 and had 5 brothers and 2 sisters. Considering over 90% of the Greek Jewish community was lost during the Holocaust, it's no surprise that Albert was the only survivor from his family. During the Holocaust, he watched as his brother was hanged, and when confronted with that, he said to his brother, "Daniel, I will survive and I will avenge you." And this is exactly what Albert did. The enormity of the Holocaust can only be recognized when we understand the profound loss across the ravaged Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Mizrahi communities at the hands of the Nazis and their collaborators. And once we make the space to remember all the victims of the Shoah, we can move forward in guarding these legacies, honoring our shared past, and coming together in community, building a stronger future. We cannot create space for inclusivity in the future without creating space for inclusivity in the past. This last year has truly demonstrated that. In the face of a worldwide pandemic and a sharp increase in hate crimes, our community remains dedicated to building a more dignified and humane world. When we hear from survivors and teens on how they've connected this past year, I see strength, resiliency, storytelling, and a true sense of connectivity. On a more personal note, today and every day, I think of my paternal grandparents who were Holocaust survivors. After losing their homes, communities, and most of their families, they built a life for their children and grandchildren and instilled in me a sense of responsibility to speak up, be an upstander, and always treat people and all living things with respect and human dignity. The music we will shortly hear in a few minutes is inspired by Flori Jagoda of blessed memory, who was born to a Bosnian Jewish family in 1923. When Yugoslavia was invaded by Nazis in April of 1941, Flori escaped to Croatia and later immigrated to the US, where she became known for her musical compositions based on Sephardic tradition and folk music. As a leader in the revival of the Judeo-Spanish language, Ladino, she used music to bring communities together and weave old traditions into the present. She is known as the keeper of the flame, the mother of the Balkan Ladino tradition, and is remembered as a composer, singer, survivor, and mentor. To her students, she was known as Nona Flori, and now we have a performance by one of her students, Aviva Turner, and her accompanying ensemble. The song wishes everyone blessings for a good week, good life, and good health, which is what I leave with you with today.
Good health, good life. Buena semana, mostel Dios. Buena semana, mostel Dios. Buena semana, mostel Dios. Salud y vida. Buena semana, mostel Dios. Salud y vida. del Dios. Buena semana, amos del Dios. Buena semana, amos del Dios. Salud y vida. Buena semana, amos del Dios. Salud y vida. Buena semana, amos del Dios. Salud y vida.
Yeah, I was born January 1925. I'm 96 years old now. My father was, the name is Ephraim Rosa. My mother was Regina Rosa. And we had 8 children. The first one was Luna Rosa, David Rosa, Daniel Rosa, Michael Rosa, Albert, Stella, and Jim. We were 8 children. I was the youngest. My older sister was Luna. She was about 16 years older than me. She was like a second mother to me. When I was born, she used to take care of me like a second mother. For my family story, couple of thousand years, my family used to live in Israel. From there, when the Romans come, they went to Spain. The Romans was killing the Jews. We live in Spain. We live in Spain for quite a few hundred years. There was a Queen Isabella over there, and they want all the Jews to convert to Christianity. My ancestors escaped from Spain in the middle age. They started killing the Jews. Anybody was to convert to Christianity. My ancestors were religious people. They escaped from Spain. They went to live in Greece. We spoke Latino because we're from Spain. Latinos, a mixture Spanish and Hebrew. So I come from a very religious family. My father was very Orthodox Jew. Me, I was the opposite. I was involved in sport, boxing, soccer, weightlifting, all kinds of sport. My father was a large car store. We were up middle class, making a very good living, comfortable living. Till the Germans called, everything changed. The Jewish community was a very Jewish community. We had a club. We used to box over there. We used to play soccer and everything. And my brother Daniel was a professional boxer. He was about 12 years older than me. He taught me how to box. I was a little kid. Yeah, in the school, the Christians used to mess up with the Jews. They used to challenge to fight. And they were cowards to fight. Me, I was not afraid of nobody. I used to fight anybody. The first thing, to be a Greek Jews, the Polish was already in Auschwitz, where about 100 miles to go to the death camp. We were in Greece, far, far away in the Mediterranean. It took us 10 days and 10 nights to arrive in Auschwitz. By the time we arrived there, most of the people are on the train. No water, no food, no toilet, not a place to sit. 90% die on the cattle train before we arrive in it. 10 days and 10 nights, no water, no food. And so then we arrived there in the children were dying inside the bus car in the arms of the mothers. They don't have to eat, no drink, no toilet. We used the box car for a toilet. When they arrived there, there was a selection issue. So the ones that were too young to sit. So when I arrived there, we had a big problem. We don't keep up the weather because from where I come from, the weather seems like South California. Doesn't get very cold. We arrived in winter. In the Auschwitz was cold in winter. Over there, just below zero. We don't use that kind of weather. We were freezing to death. And the other people, the Polish Jews used to tell us, you don't speak Yiddish, you're not a Jew. Whereas the Sephardic Jew was everything against us. We don't speak Yiddish, we don't speak German, and we cannot take the weather. Three things against us. When a German calls you to say, come here, we don't understand what he was saying, they used to bring us to death to kill us on the spot. Some of the Sephardic Jews, the miracle hours survive. Very few survive. Most of them, they die. I share that story because many people, they don't believe a Holocaust exists. They also nobody else about the Sephardic. It's only found by the Ashkenazi. Many people don't know they exist, but they exist because I was there and I saw many people get killed, die, and starving for hunger and hanging too. 6 million people got killed. Innocent people, including 70 members of my family got killed in the front of my eyes. I saw my brother hang, I saw my sister beat to death, and my cousin get shot. The world to know was anybody, not to nobody to happen that the tragedy happened to the Jews, to anybody, that regardless of race or religion. So the world should know about the Sephardic Jews. We also suffer. We also have become voluntary to speak at the museum of the Holocaust, people to know students and everybody else. And the major word is to love each other. Everybody is children of God, right? The same, everybody born in the same way.
So my name is Julia Davis, and I'm the Associate Manager of Education Programs at Holocaust Museum LA. And this year, as we all know, has been a very strange and trying one. But I wanted to share a little bit about some of the programming that I have had the privilege of running and working with throughout this year. Back in last April, when the pandemic first hit, students from Holocaust Museum LA's Teen Advisory Board reached out to me and said that they wanted to, in some way, continue the project that they had envisioned of hosting an event for teens and for survivors. So we came together and brainstormed. It was the beginning of Zoom, and we decided to gather together for a single intergenerational event. It was a blast, and everyone had a really, really good time. It was a moment of hope in what was then a really, really scary and isolating moment. And we all decided to do it again the following month. Then we decided as a group to do it every 2 weeks. And before long, we started gathering every single week. And for the last almost 10 months, we've been gathering every single Friday on Zoom, a group of Holocaust survivors from our Los Angeles community and a group of teens from Southern California. On average, we have between 20 and 30 people joining every single week, and we share about what's going on in our personal lives, our pasts, our challenges and successes of the week. And it has really given us an opportunity to come together and support one another. I think that we often talk at the Holocaust Museum and in the field of Holocaust studies and education about how learning about the Holocaust builds empathy and really, really does teach students the importance of being a citizen, a good citizen, an upstander, and being empathetic and tolerant to others. I think that is also true, but it's also important to get to know each other as human beings. And that's really what we've been able to do during this past year. So in just a moment, you'll be able to hear from 5 different teens from our teen board: Cassidy, Emma, Gracie, Scott, Nomi, and Meredith, and 2 survivors in our community, David Lenga and Ava Nathanson, who have been part of this program and who have been able to continue gathering. During these meetings, we've talked about things ranging from childhood memories from back in Poland, Budapest, Slovakia, different countries across Europe, and the memories that are associated with those places, as well as the ways that we can best remember those who were lost during the Holocaust, and the ways that as young people we can carry forward the memories of those people who were lost. So it has really and truly been my privilege to gather with people throughout the past year from 2 different generations, and to facilitate these conversations. But without further ado, I want to pass it over to the students to share how they have been impacted by these gatherings, and to the survivors to share how they have been impacted. You'll see a short video of students reflecting on their time throughout the past year, gathering every Friday, and then we'll have the chance to have a facilitated conversation between a survivor, David Lenga, and a student, Meredith Maxwell, about the ways that they have learned and interacted throughout the past 10 months.
despite never being able to meet these amazing people in person and never being in like a classroom setting. I have learned more in this last year and like created such a profound sense of community with these people over the past year than I have, I think, with like most groups of people I've met even in person.
It was marvelous to look forward once a week to see people whom you like and you know and have a community. I also know that there are some of the survivors who are very lonely, and for them it was so meaningful and so necessary. And I also enjoy the fact that we were able to share some of our past, you know, the talking about the favorite foods and how we celebrate holidays, and I learned a lot about different cultures and different communities, which I would have probably not had a chance to learn otherwise. Regardless what the distance was, if we were all together, it sort of jumped over distance and pulled it all together. Mm-hmm. It was like a bouquet of flowers from all over.
Going to these Zoom meetings on Friday was just refreshing, and knowing that like if these survivors and the fellow team board members can do it every week and, you know, just keep getting through the days, then, you know, I can do it too.
I find it very interesting to have something to look forward to each week. And also to me, it is like saying goodbye to the week and starting Sabbath, because we light a candle together. So it was like starting a Sabbath together. That was very important and very touching to me that I was in my own community starting the Sabbath.
I was raised in the Catholic Church, and so I never had any experience with like Jewish holidays. And so being welcomed with such like open arms to different holiday celebrations has been such a unique experience.
And I really appreciate the young people like you who is involved in it, because I so enjoy working and exchanging ideas with young people. To me, that's probably one of the highlights of the week, is having the young people involved in there.
I mean, we're so happy to be there.
What I love most about our Friday gatherings is spending time with survivors that most of my peers and most people in general would not have this experience, to spend so much time with Holocaust survivors. What's been really meaningful and educational for me about these meetings is them teaching me perspective, especially given the current moment, because sometimes I'll come to the meetings and I'll feel really upset about something, or maybe I had a bad day, and I listen to them and I kind of like after the meeting, I say to myself, like, I am okay. Like, they are here, they're hopeful, they really put things into perspective for me, which is really, really meaningful. And I just love the program and it's amazing.
So there were a lot of things that happened in the past year. And for me, the ability to not only talk to my peers as well as Holocaust survivors has been a really interesting way for me to still remain in touch with other people in a way that's both educational for me and also in a way that I feel really strengthens our bond as a community in general. And having that opportunity while in the environment that we are in was really exceptional for me. I really got to know a lot of the survivors more personally. I got to learn a lot more of their stories, but also their personalities, what they like, and things of that nature, right? So I really enjoyed that aspect of getting to spend more time with other people that I might normally not have, and really using that opportunity to make the best of the time that we currently have. And I hope to carry that spirit of continuously staying in touch, learning more about different people, really just learning more about the community that you're in and the histories that we all have together, and really just spending the time, the dedication to really make those a long-lasting relationship and to really build something from that point on.
Friday night gatherings have meant so much to me kind of over this past pandemic year, and every week it's always something I'm looking forward to, and it's always a highlight of my week. I would say it's definitely a really interesting experience, especially kind of the pandemic being kind of the first major collective kind of event that our generation has gone through, kind of hearing from survivors who went through several of kind of events like that were significantly worse than kind of what we've been going through right now. It definitely, I think, puts various challenges that I faced throughout the week perhaps in perspective. So most of my experiences kind of getting to know survivors have been first kind of hearing their story or what they went through when they were younger, and then kind of after that getting to know them now. But it's really been interesting kind of reversing that process and kind of getting to know who they are now as people and professionals and people who are part of families, and then kind of going back and learning more about kind of how their past and what happened to them during the Holocaust connects to what they're going through now and how they live their lives. I think getting to know survivors this way has been another really valuable experience. And I think it's also kind of seeing how they kind of apply lessons from the Holocaust to their lives today, I think has also kind of helped me kind of even more apply those same lessons to my own life. And so it's always, I think, such a valuable experience, and we always laugh. We always have kind of interesting things to talk or debate about. This happens basically every week, but how finding things that kind of everyone is able to kind of connect to in this kind of spread out, kind of like remote, disconnected world. It's really kind of interesting to see kind of the universal experiences that people have intergenerationally and across different continents.
The Friday nights have meant so much to me. It is so special to be able to meet with Holocaust survivors every Friday and just continue to build the connections each week. I think that they have so much wisdom, they give the best advice, and it's so nice to have a place where I can just debrief on my week, and there are people to listen and who care, and I just love learning like little fun details about them, like their first car or their favorite pastry growing up. And I feel confident now that I continue to pass on these details and their stories to the next generation and my children. And it's just great to be able to get to know them so intimately like this. So I'm super thankful for our Friday Shabbat gatherings.
So I'm so grateful to the students for being part of the gatherings and for making the past year so special, and for making huge distance and various anxieties and difficult challenges feel smaller. So I want to invite in a live moment of conversation between the teen board president, who has been joining the calls since last April, Meredith Maxwell, and one of the survivors in our community, David Lenga, who has also been joining the calls every single Friday and singing our Friday Shabbat prayers for us. So if Meredith, you could turn your video on. There you go. I see you. I wanted to start by asking you what these Friday nights have meant to you. I think that we know as a community how important Holocaust education is, but I think that these Friday night gatherings have been something a little bit different than that. So what has it meant to you to come together as a community every Friday for the past year?
First, hi David, hi Julia. Hope you guys are doing well. These Friday gatherings mean the world to me. I've grown up in a Jewish community. I went to Jewish elementary school, preschool, and I've been involved with the museum for quite some time. And I've always been raised with the idea of, from generation to generation, door to door, we have a duty to pass on stories and tradition. And so having the opportunity to come to these Friday night Shabbat meetings make me feel like I'm fulfilling, so many of the values that I was brought up with. I mean, I'm only 18, but, I still feel that I'm making a difference in my community. I'm helping the world make a better place. And I also think my generation is in a really unique situation where we're one of the last generations to be able to interact with Holocaust survivors. And so if anything, it's kind of our duty to make sure that we do interact with them, that we do see them as more than just like a name on the page or something, that we know them, we learn their stories, we learn who they are as people, so that, you know, what they've been through and their legacies are never forgotten. And I think the Friday night meetings give us the perfect opportunity for that.
I think one of the special things is that we oftentimes, as Emma briefly touched on in her segment of that video, we oftentimes have a 1 hour opportunity to hear a Holocaust survivor's entire life story, right? Or just 1.5 hours to hear about 8 years, 40 years, 60 years, 80 years, right? And throughout the past year, one of the joys has been being able to hear Slovak and Yiddish and Hungarian and French and Italian spoken on these calls, and being able to hear the types of soup and the types of pastries that were made in Poland before the war, things that you could never fit into the 1 hour segments that we are oftentimes given to hear a Holocaust survivor's story. So I feel personally like I've been able to get a look into what Europe really looked like before the war, and learn about the lives of survivors before the Holocaust, which in my opinion is so impactful, because at our museum we say in order to understand the loss, we have to understand what existed before. So I wanted to turn to you, David, and ask what some of your favorite questions or sessions have been, and some of your favorite things that you've shared with students during these Friday gatherings.
My most favorite thing that I always wanted to share with the students, and I try to, was my experiences before the war, because during the war, it is well known the tragedy that we went through. But before the war, we had a very normal life as children. And even though we experienced anti-Semitism in Poland, it was always underneath the surface. It was always there. You just had to scratch the surface and it came up to the surface. But we learned how to circumnavigate that situation over the so many years that living in Poland. Jews lived in Poland for 1,000 years, and in different periods, under different regimes for that matter. So we have learned how to coexist with the surroundings around us. And we have mostly built a Jewish community so powerful and so self-sufficient that we hardly had the need to have to turn to the authorities that be, the regular government authority. We solved all our problems. We had Jewish cemeteries, we had Jewish synagogues, we had Jewish Bet Din, which means the high, the seat of justice that was dispensing justice with disputes. So just small little things, but the Jews relied very much on themselves to live in Poland, a thriving existence. And I was born into this thriving existence. So I knew wonderful times living in Poland. But then, of course, everything came to a crashing end when I was 11 years old. I finished my 5th grade and Nazis invaded Poland and everything just went hell, okay? And so this is what I was thrown. But I could dwell a lot on my 6 years of hell during the war, and I do it occasionally when it is pertinent. But I feel that the happier time of my life is the one I would really like to talk about with the students, because they are, many of them for a long time have been under the impression that the only life we knew was the life of the Holocaust. That's not true. We knew a wonderful life before the Holocaust. And of course, we knew a wonderful life after the Holocaust. That is another miracle. And these are the things I try to share with the students.
Thank you so much. And I'll ask you another question, David, which is, what have you learned from these students in the past year? Or what's one thing that you've learned? Because I'm sure
what I've learned is the level of inquisitiveness, the level of curiosity about what happened. Because frankly, while it happened, everything was suppressed worldwide. there was not too much news coming out from any source because there were news, all right, but they were suppressed by governments and by different political movements. So many people went through the Holocaust in the areas where there was no Holocaust, like the United States and Britain, and they knew very, very little about what happened. And so it is very distressing for me to find out afterwards that the world didn't do anything about it, supposedly because they didn't know. Of course, they knew. But these are the kind of things that I'm trying to bring to the attention of the younger people, that apathy, and the world has shown apathy. The apathy and the indifference that the world has shown during the Holocaust is intolerable. It was intolerable then, it's intolerable now, and it cannot be allowed to happen again. And I'm emphasizing that to all my listeners, the young especially, how dangerous it is for a repeat to happen of what happened if we are becoming indifferent and apathetic and only think that, okay, doesn't touch me, so why should I care? That is the worst attitude you can have, because it may not touch you at this moment, but it will touch you eventually, because evil is a virus. Evil spreads like a deadly virus, and it touches eventually everybody. We cannot allow this to rise to the surface. And this is the awareness that I'm trying to bring to the young people. To be vigilant and to be recognize the danger.
Thank you. And Meredith, what are some of the things that you've learned from survivors in our community, David and others, that have stuck with you or that you remember now, even if they might have been included in sessions months ago?
Well, I've learned that David might be the most interesting man on earth. He has more stories than you can even imagine. And each time I hear one, I'm left, in shock. I've learned something crazy and new that I didn't know. I've learned a lot. I think it's really interesting because as an Ashkenazi Jew, I know about my culture and I know where my family comes from, but it's so cool hearing stories about people who come from the same areas in Poland as my family and give me, like a little peek into what life was like probably for my family back then. And so I always really appreciate hearing those stories, or when somebody, I've had David tell me jokes in Yiddish before that I've passed on to my grandfather, my Zadie, who ends up being like, oh, that was my favorite joke when I was a kid. My grandparents always told me that. So it's those cultural connections that I find. And even with, people who aren't necessarily from Poland or Lithuania, it's just those Jewish connections of, oh, we both grew up loving Purim. And I see how similar I am to these people.
Thank you so much. Meredith, I know that you might have written down a couple of questions that you wanted to ask David. So I would love to invite you to do that.
Yes. So David, my first question for you is, what's your favorite overall part about the Friday night Shabbat meetings?
I love, first of all, to be in the company of young people. They make me feel young, truly. And I love the enthusiasm in which the young students are participating. I love their eagerness to find out of what life was like in Europe, because Europe was the cradle of Jewish civilization. Europe produced the greatest writers, the greatest poets, the greatest musicians, the greatest plays. It is just beyond words, and it was deep, it was meaningful, and it spread throughout Eastern Europe in particular, where Yiddish was spoken. Yiddish was my Mamelushn, the Yiddish was my mother tongue, I grew up with it. And so the culture that emanated from Poland, whether it was Vilna, the cradle of Jewish civilization, or Lodz or Warsaw, Krakow, or any of the big cities, we had in our city 5 daily Yiddish newspapers, okay, on a daily basis. We had vibrant Jewish organizations, Zionist organizations, the Bund, so many others. We all, the young people, all joined there. were immersed in Jewish life. And these are the things that I love to share with my audience, because I want them to know that Yiddish life as it was an elixir for the soul. It really was. It lifted up the Jewish people. It brought them, it was the glue that kept them together. It really was. Imagine in exile for 2,000 years in so many different countries, and being dispersed among majorities which were not Jewish. And of course, all the oppression and the pogroms and the inquisitions and whatever that Jews experienced. And yet they were by miracle able to remain a nation and to get a rebirth in Israel in 1948. And these are all miracles. But what kept the Jewish people together was their past. Their past and their traditions and their culture, and their languages, Yiddish, Ladino, in different parts of, and of course the Bible, the Torah. The Torah was the core to which every Jew, no matter what persuasion he was, every Jew had the same Torah. They may interpret it a little bit differently. They may maybe try to change it a little bit or look at it or interpret it different. But the fact is that the Torah was the core that kept, it was the glue that kept all the Jewish communities of the world together. That doesn't go, if you go to Japan or you go to Beijing or you go to Uruguay or wherever you go, they have the same Torah and they pray to the same God and they have the same traditions basically. So this is what kept us together. Another thing, it is very important to note, every nation in the world has an identity, have two identities. They have the religious identity and they have the national identity. Okay, so you can be an American Orthodox Christian, or you can be an American Catholic, but you're still an American, but you have two separate identities. The Jews' identity as Jews is so intertwined with their religion, you cannot separate, because the religion of the Jewish people is the history of the Jewish people. And the history of the Jewish people is the religion of the Jewish people. They are inseparable. It is unique in the annals of history. It is something to really be thinking about, because that is one of the reasons why the Jewish people are so unique and they are so able to be resilient throughout the ages. These are the stories, these are the thoughts that I'm trying to bring to the Jewish audience, to the young Jewish audience.
That's beautiful, David. Thank you. So my next question, it's a little bit more lighthearted, but how have the Shabbat meetings helped you during the pandemic and during quarantine?
Immeasurable, immeasurable. It's beautiful. It is heartwarming. It is something I always look forward to with great elation, because I find it so uplifting to see my friends week after week and tell what happens during the week and just share our experiences and so forth, and get maybe tips from one another about what. And frankly, it is an uplifting experience, because everyone is adhering to the same Shabbat. Everybody is sharing in the same history. Everybody is enjoying the tales of what was and bring back memories of yonder, our great-grandparents, and these are the kind of atmosphere that is created during those meetings, Zoom. This, I could never have reached this kind of audience without the Zoom. So the Zoom is really a silver lining in all the darkness. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. So my last question for you is, so, every Friday we have a question of the week. What's one question you wish you got to answer? Like anything. What's something you wish we asked on the Friday night meetings?
What is the one particular question that I would like to have answered?
That you would like to answer for us.
Okay. Well, let's see. There are so many, but one particular question is, what measures can we take as a Jewish community to unify the Jewish community. Because this is a very big, big question, for the simple reason that in spite of all our efforts and in spite of all our trying to share common destiny and all that, there is still a great difference of opinion, a great disagreement in many parts of the Jewish community. How do we unify the Jewish community to speak with one voice? Because only when we do that can we stand up really strongly against evil. We can be advocates for the good. We can have a voice that reverberates if we are united. And this is what I would like to discuss next with my audience.
I love that. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And I wanted to close with a final question for you, Meredith, which is, you are going off to college next year. Congratulations. And I'm wondering if there is one thing that you have learned from David that you will carry with you and tell your new friends about and talk about when you leave your formal involvement with the museum at the end of this year.
So I've learned so much from David besides the fun Yiddish words. Probably that there's always room to learn. I mean, every time, David, just in talking to you, I can see how educated and how intelligent you are beyond just the classroom, a classroom setting. It's, I've learned that there's a lot to learn in life. You're constantly learning. There's constantly places to find out new things, and to always be in search of that, because it helps make you, a better person and a better member of society. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you learned in a book. It can be something you learned through having dinner with someone or walking down the street or anything. So I definitely value that, and the importance of family. I'm going to college near my family because these meetings made me realize how grateful I am to have my grandparents around, and how I should really take advantage of being with them right now. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you both so much. And thank you for joining me every Friday. Thank you for sharing with the listeners and the panelists here the real value of connecting across generations. I think that one of my takeaways from this year is how truly and genuinely lucky I am to sit with a group of people who I probably never would have met if not for the museum, and if not for, honestly, this strange pandemic year, and to hear about everyone's different life experiences and how we were all raised in different ways and in different places and have moved through the world in different ways and had various experiences, but that we all choose to sit down in front of our computers on a Friday evening, learn about one another, say the Shabbat prayers, and enter into our weekends feeling a little bit more uplifted, a little bit more connected, and a little bit more informed. So thank you both for being a part of that, and for being wonderful.
I would like to add that, speaking on behalf of all the Holocaust survivors and on behalf of all the people participating, we want to express our gratitude to you for a wonderful stewardship of this program, and for how beautifully you were putting it together and made it interesting from week to week, and how delightful you are to work with. And so we wish you all the best in the world. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
I second that. The students second that.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so without further ado, I wanted to have us close out our hour by hearing David sing the Yiddish partisan song, which I heard sung about over a year ago for the first time, and I feel like it was one of the most moving experiences that I've had in the past 2 years. So it's something that I always want to share with others and make sure that others get the chance to hear. And the song is incredibly moving in Yiddish. So we wanted to make sure that it retains the power of the words spoken in the initial language in which it was sung. And then, David, if you would like, you definitely don't have to, but if you'd like,
before I start doing that, I would like to preface by telling the audience, especially the young people that may not understand Yiddish, okay? This song is written by a partisan during the war, during the really greatest danger, and he really took the life in his own hand by writing it. But it is a song of despair, a song of hope, and a song of uplifting optimism that even though we are despairing right now, our day will come where our foot will stomp down hard, telling the world, here we are, we survived. So now I'll be singing the song to you, okay? Okay. Die zoeken de schemel als de geest im letzten Weg. Gotschimlen bleiene verstellen blue Teig. Willkommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schuh. Es wird abbeugt unser Trott, wir seinen du. Von grünen Palmen, Lampen, weiten Land von Schnee. Wir kommen nun mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wie gefallen es ist, ein Sprotz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird noch unser Gewirre, unser Mut. Und wie gefallen es ist, ein Sprotz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird noch unser Gewirre, unser Mut. Die Morgensinn wird begurten uns dem Heim. Und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Und neu versummen wird die Sinn in dem Kajor. Wie ein Parol soll gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Die sucht nicht Kämel aus der Geist im letzten Weg. Gotschimlen bleiene verstellen Bluetei. Willkommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schuh. Es wird abbeugt und unser Trott wir seinen du. Geschrieben ist das Lied mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Das ist kein Liedl von einer Vogel auf der Frei. Nur so dein Volk zwischen Falle dicke Wand. Das Lied gesingen mit Naganis in die Hand. Nur so dein Volk zwischen Falle dicke Wand. Das Lied gesingen mit Naganis in die Hand. Drum such nicht Kämel aus der Geist im letzten Weg. Beide Himmelblone verstellen Gruetei. Willkommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schuh. Es wird abbeugt unser Trott, wir seinen du. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, David.
My pleasure. And it was a great pleasure to see all of you. Wishing everybody much happiness as you go forward in life.